Leah had always been a woman with an easy smile and bright eyes. At 40 years old, however, her face bore the marks of a life that did not meet her expectations. The painful divorce and the loss of the job she loved so much had left deep scars on her soul. She felt like a shadow, wandering the streets of the big city without a defined purpose. Leah grew up in the big city, nurturing the dream of becoming a writer. Despite her parents' love, they never understood her passion, preferring that she pursue a more stable career. Determined, she balanced temporary jobs and a degree in literature, always focused on her goals. It was during this period that Leah met Carl, her ex-husband. In the beginning, it seemed like a fairy tale. Carl was charismatic and appeared to support her dreams. They married young, full of plans. In the first years, everything seemed harmonious. Leah began a promising career at a publishing house, while Carl advanced in his law career. But as Leah grew professionally, Carl began to change. Support turned into subtle criticisms that undermined her confidence. "Do you really think you have the talent to be a writer?" he would say, with a tone that seemed unassuming but cut deep. Over time, he started to insinuate that she was boring and that if they separated, it would be difficult for her to find someone better. The remark seemed like cruel irony, but in those moments it felt like the truth to Leah. She believed that he was the only person capable of loving her, that she was not worthy of anything more. These words infiltrated her mind, making her question her choices, her worth, and even her abilities. Gradually, she abandoned her dream of writing, stifled by the doubts he planted. Each criticism was like a seed that sprouted, growing until it became a paralyzing block. The marriage slowly deteriorated. Frequent arguments and a deafening silence took the place of love. Leah tried to keep the flame alive, suggesting therapy, but Carl rejected any attempt at help, blaming her for everything. Frustration built up, and she felt her life slipping away in a relationship that no longer made sense. It was only after 10 years of marriage, after the accumulation of wounds, that Leah finally had the courage to ask for a divorce. The process was arduous, and Carl used his influence to make her life difficult. He did not hesitate to sabotage her career, spreading rumors that forced her to leave the publishing house she loved so much. Leah felt the weight of Carl's words as a burden that accompanied her, but also, in some way, she saw the separation as a chance to start anew. At 42 years old, she found herself alone in a small apartment, struggling to rebuild her life. Carl's words still echoed in her mind, mixed with the voices of co-workers who looked at her with pity. "Poor Leah," she heard them whisper. "So talented, but threw it all away because of the divorce." The days dragged on, monotonous and grey. Leah tried to find a job, but the doors seemed to close before she could even knock. With each failed interview, the feeling of uselessness grew. She avoided looking in the mirror, fearing she would see only the reflection of her failures. Her friends, once so present, gradually drifted away. Invitations to go out diminished, and Leah found herself increasingly isolated. Social media, once a source of connection, became a painful reminder of all she had lost. Photos of happy couples, job promotion announcements, celebrations of achievements, everything seemed to mock her current situation. After 2 years in this situation, her days seemed dark and sad, and it was difficult to get back on her feet. On a particularly challenging morning, Leah decided to go for a walk. The sky was filled with dark clouds, threatening rain at any moment. The streets were almost deserted, which perfectly matched her state of mind. While walking absent-mindedly, mentally reviewing all the points where her life had gone wrong, Leah didn't notice the unevenness in the sidewalk. Her foot caught on a bump, and she fell awkwardly, hitting her knee hard on the rough ground. The physical pain was immediate, but it was the emotional pain that hit her harder. There, fallen on the empty street sidewalk, Leah felt the full weight of her loneliness. Tears began to stream down her face, mixing with the first raindrops that started to fall. Why keep going? She wondered, feeling completely defeated. Maybe Carl was right. Maybe I'm really not capable of anything. It was at that moment, when Leah was about to completely surrender to despair, that a gentle voice cut through the silence of the street. "Are you okay?" Leah looked up, meeting the concerned gaze of a man who was crouching beside her. He had warm brown eyes and a kind smile that contrasted with the sadness of the day. I don't think so," Leah replied, her voice choked with tears. The man, who introduced himself as Mark, didn't hesitate. Gently, he helped Leah to stand, noticing her expression of pain as she put weight on her injured leg. "We need to take care of this wound," he said firmly. "There is a hospital not far from here. Can I accompany you there?" Leah nodded, unable to form words. The kindness of this stranger caught her completely off guard. As they walked slowly toward the hospital, Mark kept a light conversation, talking about the weather, about the city, about little things of everyday life. His voice was calm and comforting, making her feel less alone. At the hospital, Mark accompanied her to the reception, ensuring that she would be attended to before saying goodbye. Leah went through the consultation, relieved to find out that it was nothing serious, just a superficial wound that would heal in a few days. As she left the doctor's office, Leah was surprised to see Mark still in the waiting room. He stood up immediately upon seeing her, a genuine smile lighting up his face. "How are you? It wasn't anything serious, I hope?" he asked, the concern evident in his voice. "I'm fine, thank you," Leah replied, feeling a wave of gratitude. "The doctor said it's just a superficial bruise." "What a relief!" Mark exclaimed. "I was really worried. Glad it wasn't anything serious." The sincerity in his words touched Leah deeply. How long had it been since someone showed genuine concern for her? The feeling was almost forgotten, yet incredibly comforting. "May I walk you home?" Mark offered. "Just to make sure you get there safely." Leah hesitated for a moment, years of distrust battling the desire to accept that unexpected gesture. Did he seem like someone familiar, perhaps a neighbor or someone she knew by sight? Finally, she nodded, grateful for the company. During the walk, they talked about simple things, the neighborhood where they lived, their jobs, little stories from daily life. Leah discovered that Mark was a literature teacher at a local school, and his enthusiasm when speaking about books and authors rekindled a long-dormant spark in her heart. When they reached the door of Leah's building, there was a moment of silence. Mark looked at her with a slight yet understanding smile. When Leah accepted the ride from Mark that night, she had no idea that he already knew her from years ago. As they drove, Mark watched her through the rearview mirror, recalling the time when he was an intern at the same publishing house where Leah worked as an editorial assistant. At the time, he was impressed by her dedication and talent. He remembered admiring her from afar, finding her not only incredibly beautiful, but also inspiring for how focused and confident she seemed in her dreams. They had worked together on one or two smaller projects, but she probably didn't remember him. To her, he was just another intern among many. Now, years later, fate seemed to have crossed their paths again, under quite different circumstances. As she thanked him for the help, unaware of the nostalgic gleam in Mark's eyes, he wondered if this would be the chance to finally introduce himself in a way that she could truly see him. "Leah," he said softly, "I know it was an unexpected situation that happened just now, but would it be too bold of me to ask for your phone number? I'd like to know if you'll be all right in the coming days." The request caught Leah by surprise. How long had it been since someone showed interest in keeping in touch with her? The idea that someone might want to get to know her better, even after seeing her in a moment of vulnerability, was almost incomprehensible. With trembling hands, Leah exchanged numbers with Mark. When they said goodbye, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Upon entering her apartment, Leah found herself smiling at her own reflection in the mirror. The face staring back at her was no longer just a portrait of her flaws and disappointments. There was a spark of something new, a possibility she had long forgotten. In the days that followed, Leah and Mark exchanged frequent messages. They were simple conversations about books they both loved, movies they wanted to watch, small daily occurrences. Each message was like a ray of sunshine penetrating the dark clouds that had hovered over her life for so long. 2 weeks after the incident, Mark invited her for coffee. Leah hesitated, the fear of the unknown battling against the desire for connection. Finally, gathering all her courage, she accepted. The meeting was surprisingly easy and pleasant. Mark had a gift for making her feel at ease, laughing at her jokes and listening attentively when she spoke. In a moment of relaxation, he revealed something unexpected. "Did you know that we've met before? It was a few years ago, at the publishing house where you worked. I was just an intern, but I remember you very well." Leah raised her eyebrows, surprised. "Really? Wow, I have no idea. Are you sure it was me?" "Yes, I do. You always seemed so focused. You were amazing," he confessed, laughing at himself. She laughed, amused by the situation. "Well, that explains why I don't remember. I was so immersed in work and, well, in the life I had at the time. But I'm flattered. And look, it's funny how the world turns, right?" Mark's relaxed tone and honesty made Leah feel even more at ease. Suddenly, the coffee meeting was no longer just a casual encounter. It became a moment of reconnection with herself, with a past she didn't even know existed. During this conversation, Leah, for the first time in years, talked about her dream of writing. To her surprise, the words flowed easily, without the weight of self-criticism that usually accompanied them. Mark listened to her with genuine interest, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Leah," he said seriously, "you are unique. The world needs to hear your stories." Those words, spoken with such conviction, touched Leah deeply. It was as if an invisible barrier had been broken, allowing her to glimpse once more at her dreams and possibilities. In the months that followed, Leah and Mark developed a friendship that seemed as natural as breathing. He constantly encouraged her, but in a genuine way, without imposing. It wasn't just about writing. He saw in her a strength that she had forgotten. With his presence and encouraging words, Mark helped Leah rebuild her self-esteem, one brick at a time. Little by little, Leah began to regain control of her life. Inspired by her own courage and with Mark's support, she applied for a new job and secured a position at a small independent publisher. The welcoming environment and new connections at work reignited something in Leah that seemed dormant: the passion for literature and, more importantly, for herself. One night, after a long day at work, Leah and Mark were sitting in a cafe, talking about books and life. Mark, who rarely talked about himself, confided something that surprised Leah. "Did you know that, for a long time, I also felt lost?" he said, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "I spent years wondering if I made any difference in someone's life, until I realized that sometimes it's not about grand gestures, but about being there for those who need it." Leah was silent for a moment, absorbing his words. It was then she realized that, although Mark appeared so confident and calm on the outside, he also carried his insecurities and wounds. This made him even more human in her eyes. Days turned into weeks, and over time, Leah began to see something that seemed so obvious to others, but that she had taken a while to realize. She had always been enough. It wasn't her past toxic relationship or life's disappointments that defined her. She was already amazing before all of that. She had just forgotten. One afternoon, while helping a young author improve a manuscript, Leah found herself reflected in his words. It was a story about someone who had lost their way, but found a new reason to believe. It was impossible not to think of herself. That night, with a subtle smile, she scribbled a sentence in the journal she now kept beside the bed. "There are people who make us disbelieve in life, and there are others who cross our path to prove that it's always worth believing." One morning, Mark showed up at her house with a different, almost shy look. He brought an envelope, and inside, a letter he had written weeks before but hadn't had the courage to deliver. In the letter, he confessed how his friendship with Leah had changed his life. He described his admiration for her, for the way she faced adversity, and how she reminded him that even the most incredible people sometimes forget their own worth. Leah read the letter with a racing heart. When she finished, she looked at Mark and for the first time saw not just a friend, but someone who also needed to be reminded of his own worth. "You have no idea of the impact you have on people, do you?" she said, "including me." Over time, the friendship between them naturally evolved into something deeper. There was no rush, no expectations, just a mutual desire to grow together. Mark helped her rediscover her light, but Leah had done the same for him. She was his living proof that past wounds did not need to define the future. Leah continued to explore her passion for literature, but now with a greater purpose. She didn't just want to write, she wanted to inspire. And more importantly, she wanted to live fully. Because after all, life was much more than any isolated chapter. It was a whole book, and Leah was determined to write a story worth telling. That late afternoon, as they walked hand in hand through the park, Leah looked at Mark and smiled. Not because he completed her, but because he had helped her remember something essential. She was already complete on her own. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.